Well, welcome back. I'm Bill Donath, President of the Logan County Genealogical and Historical Society. And today we're doing another Civil War stories. So this will be number 18 in the series. Might have to figure out how to do something different there because we're going to have some pretty big numbers by the time we're done with this project. Today we're talking about the early 1862, getting ready for the campaign that would include Fort Henry, Fort Donelson, and Shiloh. So we're getting into that, and what we're going to hear today is an account of a reconnoitering discovery mission that took 2 weeks in late or mid to late January of 1862. So, but first we have a report in the Lincoln Herald from January 16th, and it's titled "Death of a Young Soldier." It says, "We regret to learn of the death of Allen Broucher, member of Captain Holden's company, who after a severe illness died at the residence of his father near Broadwell in the county on Sunday last. He was a young man of much promise, only 18 years of age, and when the war broke out joined the army to defend the integrity and honor of his country, for which he gave his life. Noble boy, there are none, not even the great, that can do a better deed." Then the follow-up article is a letter from Henry Sturgis that would appeared in the January 30th Lincoln Herald of 1862. And it says, "Letter from Henry Sturgis, his account of the expedition from Cairo, the Logan County boys on a tramp." And his letter was dated January 25th. It says, "Dear Herald, as we have returned from our great expedition over in Old Kentuck, I will again give you a few items. I should have liked to have been able to give them to you, notes by the way, while we were out, but letter writing was tabooed by the commanding general. Consequently, the world was obliged to remain in ignorance of what transpired during the 2 weeks' trip in the land of Dixie. True, there was any amount of accounts from our correspondents," and he puts those in quotes, and there's where the laugh comes in. "Since we have returned, we have looked up the old papers just to see what we had done. And I can assure you that of what we saw, there was not the correct report. One report says that General Grant, accompanied by his staff and Captain Osborne's cavalry, his bodyguard, made a reconnaissance to within 5 miles of Columbus. Now such might have been the fact, but it is doubtful here. The last that was seen of General Grant and Captain Osborne's bodyguard, they were at or near Bates Mill, about 8 miles from Fort Jefferson. Company H of the 4th Cavalry approached to within 3.5 miles of Columbus, and there were none of our forces that went nearer." Another report said that the force left Fort Jefferson and proceeded directly towards Mayfield, which was another mistake. General McClernand's brigade took the road towards Columbus, supported by Colonel Cook, with the 7th and 28th Illinois on the right, and on the second night out encamped only about 12 miles from the boasted rebel stronghold. The only troops that went to Mayfield from Jefferson were Company H, commanded by Captain Wimple, and that is 4th Cavalry, who was sent bearer of dispatches from General McClernand to General Smith. General Smith and General Wallace were advancing toward Fort Beauregard from Paducah. At the camp near Mayfield, I had the pleasure of again meeting Captain Larison and his company, which was the 2nd Cavalry from Atlanta area, who are now attached to General Wallace's brigade. From this we started on to the morning of Friday, 16th instant and took across the country toward Louisville, near which place we fell in with the whole of our brigade, which had started that morning on the back track. We were considerably surprised at this, as we had supposed from the first that our destination was Columbus, and that we would have the pleasure of going into quarters in that town, provided we had the strength to get there. And this backward movement looked too much like a retreat without a fight. Friday night and Saturday throughout the day, it rained incessantly, but we had to pull up stakes and leave in the morning as usual. After a march of 4 or 5 hours through the sacred mud of Kentucky, we pitched our tents near the ancient-looking town of Blancheville. This was the residence of a noted character by the name of Capper, who had a reputation of having killed 2 Union men and who had tried to raise a company for the rebel army but failed. He had fled the country some days before and had left his cattle, sheep, hogs, chickens, corn, tobacco, household furniture, and 2 old slaves. All this, with the exception of the slaves, were confiscated for Sam. We stayed at this camp till Monday morning, waiting for a part of the train to come up. At this place, Captain Wimple received information that there was a man named Denin living nearby who had threatened to shoot any Union man that should set foot in his place. Our captain, with a squad of 10 men, went to see about it. Found the gentleman at home and brought him into camp together with a very valuable horse, another inferior one, and a gun. Monday we were again on the road, and before night encamped at Fort Jefferson again. And by Tuesday night, the whole force were back again at the quarters in Cairo, Fort Holt, and Bird's Point. Besides confiscating Capper's property, a large saw and flouring mill belonging to a man named O'Neill, known as Bates's Mill, were burned to the ground, together with a large amount of the lumber, corn, and wheat. The dough flour on hand and the cattle, horses, mules, wagons, etc. were taken away. The complaint against the mill was that it had been furnishing flour for Columbus and also sawing plank for rebel gunboats. I will not venture an opinion on the justness of the act, as we soldiers have no right to do in a public manner, but I must confess that I have sympathy for the people of that locality who depend altogether on the mill for their breadstuffs. Do the cause no good. I might relate numberless little adventures and incidents connected with our tramp, but it would take up too much room. Besides, I haven't the time to relate them. We had but one accident, and that happened by the accidental discharge of a carbine, the ball from which passed through the clothes of a man called Michael Scully, burning his back considerably but not seriously. The towns through which we passed all wore the same look, that of the most abject poverty. In the town of Blandville, I was informed by a citizen that there had been no good in the stores for 7 or 8 months. Coffee and tea were articles very rarely met with through the country. In Columbus, coffee is worth $1 per pound Tennessee money, or 50 cents cash, with the exception of sugar and molasses, and everything else in proportion. The young men of the country have all either joined the Southern Army or gone north, and the timid rascals who are afraid to fight and have no courage enough to stay at home have fled to parts unknown. Every other woman is a widow or pretends to be. I understand that the object of the expedition was to cut off a retreat of the rebels from Bowling Green and to prevent reinforcements going from Columbus to that point, And if that was the only object, we have the satisfaction of knowing that we did all that was required of us, even if we hadn't to fight. We had a pretty rough time generally so far as bad weather and short rations were concerned, but otherwise we had nothing to complain of. We are under obligations to the worthy corncrackers for several good substantial meals and Sunday drinks of bourbon and old rye, which went far towards keeping off the chills. I'll not say anything about how Slaughter got the honey, or how our orderly cussed headquarters, not how Lieutenant Callan watched for rebels with a cocked pistol in his hand and how he was fast asleep. Now, not how our captain failed to make good the threat he had made before starting. All these little things I'll remain silent about because I agreed to. Let the cat out of the bag anyway, didn't he? We are back again to our old quarters, now waiting anxiously for Uncle Sam's clerk to come along, and if that important individual knew with what delight his appearance in the camp would be hailed, he would certainly hurry up the cakes. 3 or 4 companies of this regiment have been paid off already, but the balance are compelled to wait for an indefinite time. One thing, however, is almost certain, and that is that the companies that remain unpaid will not again leave camp until the money due them is forthcoming. I notice that the ladies and gentlemen of Lincoln have been busy getting up articles for soldiers' comfort, which they have been sending to the various camps. With all due respect for the feelings of those connected with the movement, I would suggest that they would turn their attention to the families of the soldiers who are at home. The men in camp are provided with plenty to make them comfortable, and as much as they can conveniently take care of, and anything more than enough is superfluous when on a march becomes more of a load than a benefit. Let those patriotic ladies and gentlemen turn their attention to the families of the volunteers. See if they are in need of anything to make them comfortable during the cold winter weather. Then they will be doing something for the cause in the right style. We are having a spell of quite pleasant weather now, and the mud is fast drying up. Cairo is really the muddiest place after a rain that I ever was in. There seems to be no bottom to it. Several additional regiments have arrived here this week from St. Louis and other places, and there are rumors afloat of another movement forward in a few days. The health of our company is not as good as it had been, although a few days' rest will probably bring the men out all right again. The firing of heavy cannon can be distinctly heard this morning, the cause of which we have no means of finding out, but we suppose it is because someone's working the guns. Henry Sturgis. So we've been on a reconnaissance mission, and they've come back from that. All this reconnaissance has 2 purposes from what I've been picking up in the previous letters. One is to make the Confederates think that Columbia is the target that they're going after. Belmont was the first indication of that in December. So they are doing a lot of activity around Columbus to try to throw off the Confederates on what their real plan is. So next time we'll talk about Fort Henry, if I remember right. So we'll see you then.